The Chinese army is about to find itself in uncharted territory. 700 soldiers are about to join a peacekeeping mission in one of the most dangerous countries on Earth. Thrown into the midst of a brutal civil war, these men and women are on the battlefield for the first time and need to learn fast. Filmed by the soldiers themselves, this documentary shows the frontline view as China's army is deployed to a war zone. These soldiers are about to embark on a new mission. They will travel over 5,000 miles to join the United Nations peacekeeping force in war-torn South Sudan.
维和的任务下来以后，我就第一个报名了。对于很多没有参加过战争，特别是像我们这一代就没有经历过的，非常非常感兴趣，也非常非常充满吸引力。
觉得男人嘛，应该到军营里去摔打磨练，那是一个大熔炉，能够把一块铁能够炼成钢的地方，所以很向往。
肯定是避免不了流血牺牲，但是走之前已经做好心理准备了。
At the invitation of the United Nations, China has committed an infantry battalion for the first time to a peacekeeping mission overseas. This footage reveals their work for the first time since the mission began in 2015. South Sudan is the world's youngest country. It gained its independence from the North in 2011. But after only 2 years, war erupted between government and rebel forces. The government forces are led by Salva Kiir, a member of the Dinka ethnic group. They are at war with rebels led by Riek Machar, a member of the Nuer ethnic minority. Both sides have stoked ethnic tensions in the war, driving deep divisions through the country.
The UN set up a number of camps around South Sudan, which provided protection to civilians of any ethnicity that felt that they were under threat.
We know that more than 2 million people have been displaced from their homes.
Thousands have been killed, not just by the violence itself, but also by things like being unable to farm because their homes have been destroyed.
The more that we can build peace, the less that the civilians need to be protected. If there's no peace, then our job protecting civilians becomes very important.
The soldiers land in Juba, the capital of South Sudan. Their first task, make it to their new home. On the outskirts of the capital city stands the headquarters of the United Nations mission. Within its walls, 3 refuge areas house over 30,000 displaced civilians. And in the middle is a space reserved for a battalion of Chinese soldiers.
刚到南大的时候，第一感觉非常热，从来没有感觉地球上还有这么热的地方。
但是，一下飞机，一到机场，看着就像到了沙漠那种炎热的感觉。
这是他们首都朱巴嘛，感觉还没我们老家好呢。但你真正过去以后，你才知道，哦，原来真有人需要我们去保护，真有这样一个地方，需要我们去维护它的安全和稳定。
The 700 peacekeepers include Company Commander Wang Zhen. And Deputy Battalion Commander Liu Zhangjuan. Veteran Army medic Liu Jian supports the team. Army photographer Yang Zhaofei must record the peacekeepers' every action.
我拍什么呢？就是拍战士们他们干什么，他们生活怎么样，他们工作怎么样，他们的训练怎么样，就是他们干啥我拍啥。
When they first arrive at the base, the team temporarily take over tents that have been left by Nepalese peacekeepers.
感觉怎么样？感觉比国内来说，想象要好，达不到要求吧，但是比我想象的还好啊。
我觉得来了以后啊，给我感受很深的一点就是咱们的友军啊，尼泊尔的步兵营啊，非常的友好。来了之后啊，给我们送吃的、送喝的，那些水全是他们的，还有这个饼干也是他们给的，味道还可以。
From day one, it's clear that life here will take a lot of getting used to.
我们到了这个任务区以后呢，就是每天晚上听不到枪声，可能都睡不着觉。每天的枪声不断，一直都在打，就像放鞭炮一样那种枪声，一直都在打。哎，刚开始去到还有点害怕，他们打嘛，我们确实是没有枪声。哎呦，今天晚上怎么没有枪声？反而更不安全了，感觉到。
The peacekeepers must protect the land reserved for soldiers and UN staff, and the camps housing displaced civilians. But before they can begin, they need to construct their new headquarters. A plot at the center of UN House has been left empty for the Chinese soldiers, and they soon get to work. Hundreds of tons of materials are brought into the camp. While the engineers get to work leveling the earth. Their accommodation cabins will be built 1 foot off the ground to keep insects and rodents out.
做这个东西在现场再量再什么耽误时间，就是你平常放完墩以后，每一个墩在一个点上就不动。
They must excavate a network of drains to cope with the country's rainy season. While their new homes are winched into place. Each of these flat-pack cabins can be built in just hours. The perimeter is made of a network of steel cages lined with a geotextile canvas. Once filled with earth, they create a 2-meter-tall barrier capable of shrugging off attacks from high explosives. After a few finishing touches, the whole of China Battalion's camp is built in just 28 days. Now, they must get to work. The Chinese peacekeepers take responsibility for the 17 sentry posts that ring UN House and Protection of Civilians Site 1. The peacekeepers patrol the protection of civilians site, known as a POC, twice a day. And each sentry post must be manned by 2 soldiers at all times. It's here that the recruits encounter their first challenge.
南苏丹的天气高温，40度左右，在太阳下暴晒，全身是秒湿，马上湿透。不过到了中午的时候，太阳太热了，你就感觉，哎呀，就是浑身不舒服，就是感觉晒得太厉害了。今天感觉怎么样？
是不是今天太热了，感觉都胸闷的慌，
是吧？怎么胸闷？
胸得很憋于心，是吧？
Protecting the peacekeepers from heat stroke is a crucial part of Army medic Liu Jian's job.
不是有冰块吗？放到这个地方降温是最好啊，这样降温比较快一些。
关键这几天的温度太高了啊，这几天平均温度在52度左右。
In these conditions, heat stroke can kill. Dr. Liu believes traditional Chinese medicine will help the soldiers adapt.
上10粒，好吧？啊，在上哨之前。
The peacekeepers don't just protect civilians from violence outside the POC, they must prevent violence erupting inside too.
You have thousands of people living right next to each other. There are very few services on offer, so people will naturally fight over resources.
People were crammed in very close to each other, and in those quite high tension environments, it's very easy for a small spark to cause conflict.
To be ready for conflict within the camp, they train to use non-lethal riot techniques, like deploying tear gas. The United Nations mission includes soldiers from all over the world, many with long experience in battle. Today, they display their riot control procedures to a veteran Danish peacekeeper. They don't know when they might be called into action, or even who they might be facing. So they have to be ready for anything. They must even prepare to put their bodies on the line for peace.
I don't like this one. The ball is really hard. You can kill a man with this one. You fight against a crowd. It's not our task to kill people.
Yes, right.
We should save you.
After some welcome advice, the general gives his final assessment.
You are nearly on the same level as the Nepalese FPUs.
The peacekeepers are in good shape, ready to protect civilians by any means necessary. And it's just in time. A battalion of Chinese soldiers have taken on a colossal task in South Sudan. Their mission is to protect civilians sheltering in a United Nations base. Company Commander Wang Zhen quickly realizes succeeding here will be different to any other battlefield.
但维和时候你不知道自己敌人是谁，你只知道自己的任务是啥。你的任务就是保护难民营安全，保护这个联合国要员。
Their new beat will be Protection of Civilian Site, or POC 1. Lying at the northwest of UN House, POC 1 is home to over 10,000 people. 7 sentry posts surround the site, each manned by 2 peacekeepers. Its irregular shape creates a bottleneck that has often been the site of violence. Deputy Battalion Commander Liu Chengjuan and his team are shocked by life inside POC 1.
多这个有的小草棚，还有草的小的一个木棚子嘛，很简陋的木棚，人满为患，就感觉非常的密集。
一号难民的内部，其实形势还是比较混乱一点的，比我们预想的复杂得多。里面有这个私藏枪支的，有这个私藏毒品的。 包括其他的一些这个打砸抢烧事件都有。
As the peacekeepers patrol, news comes over the radio from the guard in Sentry Post 4. This is not an attack on the camp. It's a fight between civilians who are sheltering inside.
两队人马用石头相互投掷，我稍微已经积累很多石头，完毕。上号少尉，你注意观察，汇报情况的不要着急，说吧。明白，收到，明白。你好，这里收了，正在控制。
真正作战攻城略地，要不搞防御。那作战对手很明确，你知道作战对手在哪，你知道自己敌人是谁。但维和时候，你的任务就是保护，还不像在真正有这个在作战当中，我们知道自己的敌人是谁，我们知道确实这个危险是要降临在我们身上的。很未知的时候就是很可怕。
Reinforcements from China Battalion are called into action. They need to break up the fighting to protect the civilians and their brothers in the sentry posts. They are backing up a unit of veteran Nepalese police. They hope to learn from the example of their more experienced colleagues.
上你锻炼一下，你站在后面干什么？你是防暴队员，你还站在我后面，过去啊！
那么我们这么少的兵力，去控制几千人的骚乱是很困难的，所以当时我们采取了这种切割。
Using their bodies, they form a barrier between the fighting groups.
Thank you.
Please go home. We come here to protect you. Go home right now. Please go home. We're your shoulder right now.
起因只是两个不同小种族的孩子做游戏，做游戏的过程中出现了打斗，之后整个两个小部落的人员就开始打斗，最后就导致了整个难民营几千人发生了械斗，成了一个很大的骚乱。
As the peace resumes in the civilian camp, over in the medical bay, things have just got busier.
条件比较简陋，伤病员也比较多。这是一名眼外伤的伤病员，我们准备给他进行清创缝合。
Can the peacekeepers make sure violence doesn't break out here again? In South Sudan, a riot among displaced civilians has left dozens injured and revealed to the peacekeepers just how dangerous the protection of civilian camps can be. These camps are for civilians sheltering from the civil war outside. After decades of conflict, huge numbers of South Sudanese men have served in armies and militias, and most civilians are armed. This makes sudden bursts of violence common. To stop a civil war breaking out inside protection camps, the peacekeepers must find and remove all weapons and military uniforms from the camp. It's a task that is led by a special group in the battalion, the unit of 14 female peacekeepers.
I can't stress enough how important it is to have women in our peacekeeping group. They have an ability to interact and communicate with women, help women in ways that men can't. We get to find out information that we wouldn't get necessarily from men.
With weapon searches, it would be quite difficult to send a man into that situation because that's a real sort of invasion of the woman's space and might be seen to be quite inappropriate.
Today, Sergeant Du Xinyue will be leading the weapons search.
受领任务之后，心情十分复杂，有些紧张，也有些害怕，因为这是我们女兵来到任务区之后首次执行武器搜查的任务。
The Chinese team partner with a Norwegian policewoman. The peacekeepers must follow strict protocol as they search civilians' dwellings for weapons.
Wow, very nice. 首先是由一个联合国警察带一名尼泊尔防暴队的队员进入， 确定房间里面没有异常之后，再由搜查人员进入，其余警戒人员在外负责警戒。在我们组搜查的时候，我们配合的联合国警察是一个非常干练的女警察。OK， 这 House Study。在3号难民营，除了执行搜查任务之外，我还有一项重要的任务。作为妇女和儿童权益保护官，我的任务是与当地的居民取得沟通和交流，以便他们理解并支持我们的这次行动。
Just one weapon was found on this search. But in 7 days, the peacekeepers will be back to search again. The peacekeepers aren't only responsible for civilians inside the protection camps. They also have a duty beyond the perimeter fence. The United Nations has almost 20,000 personnel deployed at 17 bases across South Sudan. From the largest in Juba, the Chinese soldiers must take supplies to the smaller bases. One of the most difficult to reach is a temporary base in Mundri. This small outpost is stranded between warring government and rebel forces.
To get to those places is an enormous logistical exercise. And for 6 months of the year, we cannot use the roads because the roads are impassable.
The rainy season in South Sudan can be quite difficult because when it really rains in South Sudan, it pours.
If it was a tarmac road, it would probably take you about an hour and a half, maybe. But in the wet season, it can take you anything up to 8 hours.
It's not uncommon for cars to get stuck, for days and be pulled out.
The peacekeepers get word that Mundri needs supplies. When the rainy season eases, they get set to transport supplies to the remote base.
那么这种巡逻呢，由于当地的路况很差，你不可能当天去当天回来，甚至有时候走在路上要走2到3天的这种时长，2到3天的路程。因为它的路通行只是一条很窄的道路，没有特别多的道路可以供你迂回。
The peacekeepers' secret weapon on this mission is the armored personnel carrier, a heavyweight fighter equipped to make it through this testing terrain. 6 huge all-terrain tires are equipped to deal with the toughest roads. The welded steel hull is bulletproof, and the 25mm cannon on top gives them firepower. At the rear, 2 propellers can power it through water, making this a fully amphibious vehicle. Rural South Sudan is bandit country. Armed militias have been known to attack travelers. The APC is equipped to defeat the bad roads and the hostile forces on them. And it's a good thing. Just 12 kilometers out of Juba, the legacy of the rainy season has made their route almost impassable. They inch past some obstacles. But soon have to call on the full power of the armored personnel carrier to get some vehicles through. It can haul any vehicle through the thick mud. But there are some sections of road they can't push through. Standing still makes them sitting ducks for any armed militias. So the peacekeepers come up with a way to make this stretch passable. And with a bit of muscle power, they get back on the road. They make painstaking progress, but then discover a worrying sign of what lies ahead. In rural South Sudan, Chinese peacekeepers discover something suspicious on the road. They're escorting water, food, and mechanical supplies to a UN base. Some abandoned, burnt-out trucks could put them in danger. These vehicles show the telltale signs of conflict nearby. The question is, are they about to drive into battle?
So you have the rebels, of course they tend to stay outside of towns and in the bushes, and they intersect travelers.
There are criminal elements along the road. There is also a risk of banditry.
The UN can very easily get caught up by complete accident in these quite violent skirmishes.
They check for rigged explosives, always mindful of a possible ambush. Wary that the people who destroyed this vehicle could be nearby, the peacekeepers decide to keep going. But it doesn't take long before they encounter rebel forces.
面临了，因为它路两边都是好多持枪的，面对当地的一帮就是武装分子，想袭击吸毒我们车队。
After a tense 30 minutes, they manage to de-escalate the situation. Night falls. The convoy reaches the temporary base in Mundri in darkness. It's clear there is an ongoing conflict nearby.
Because UN bases have basic resources, this can make them vulnerable to attacks, and this has been known to happen in the South Sudanese civil war.
But just before dawn, the peacekeepers are woken by heavy gunfire. The camp could be under attack. This small base offers little protection to the soldiers. First, they must establish what is happening. If they're under attack, they need to establish if they can win a pitched battle against the militia. But it's possible they're just caught in the crossfire.
不偏袒有任何一方，我们不是和政府军是是一个战好的，也不和反政府军是一个战好的，只有中立。只有我们在人员、我们的装备受到致命威胁的时候，我们才可以使用武力。
就部分的抗美飞过来了，
是吧？
就那个西南角，刚开始哒，是吧？现在听声音有点近。大家把实弹全部上去，好吧？
As dawn breaks, the peacekeepers can at last see exactly what's happening. and it's not reassuring.
然后正在往西走，他们身上都带有这个各类的这个火器，然后装甲车还没有，他们的装甲车还没有离开。
同志们，交火的重点方向在我们的西侧这块，我们炮手在炮车上保持了那个观察，咱们其余人员在这个地方隐蔽，然后派出相应的警戒个人一定要集中注意力，同时我们的武器上膛。
They must now decide how to react.
So UN peacekeepers do have a mandate to use the weapons that they have under two circumstances. One is in self-defense and the other is in defense of their mandate.
If you are outnumbered, you are a small force and there's many around you, you do need to make an assessment of whether in trying to fight back, whether you are actually going to cause yourself more of an issue.
The team decide to warn the soldiers outside that the peacekeepers are here and are prepared to use force.
This is UN camp. Leave here, please. This is UN camp. Leave here. This is UN camp. Ceasefire and leave here immediately. This is UN camp. Ceasefire and leave here immediately. Or we will take actions.
Then, a small contingent of peacekeepers goes out to meet the soldiers and escort them away. The gunfire ceases and calm descends onto the camp. Only now can the soldiers eat for the first time since arriving in Mundry.
谢谢各位战友对我们的关照。能在这种情况下吃到一碗热面，简直是对大家这种十分大的一种心理安慰。好的。
They've restored peace outside this base, but back in Juba, tensions are rising. The peacekeepers are back in Juba, patrolling the base and keeping watch. When Chinese New Year arrives, it's an opportunity for the team to take stock of what they've learned. The soldiers set to work bringing a small piece of China to South Sudan. Playing games, and cooking traditional dishes. It's also a time for the peacekeepers to connect with their families. And for Sergeant Chun Chiotsen, phoning home feels particularly important.
去之前就已经有很多传闻说那边疾病很多，而且经常发生战争。就我妈听到之后，就可能也是极力反对我，不让我去，然后还天天给我做思想工作。能有去维和机会，必然要去参加一次。
看到了吗？看到了。看到了。哎，我也想你们。哎，爸爸变胖了，我爸。爸，你变胖了。对呀，我都晒黑了。
This is the first time Chun has been able to speak with her family since arriving in Juba.
拿个啥子？看我全家人，还有就是我舅舅、我娘俩，挺多人的。他们都感觉就是特别为我开心吧，因为我来维和了，就是来了非洲这边，就是执行任务，代表的是为国家站岗，感觉他们心里特别的开心。这视频聊天吧，感觉安心了，这至少让我知道家里很开心。
像聊的最多的可能就是 还是聊自己的家里边的一些情况。有时候都会，因为慢慢都想家了嘛，时间越长越想家，都会想一想这个家里边怎么样。
On the day of New Year itself, the soldiers are allowed to watch the celebrations in Beijing and ring in the New Year themselves. A welcome reminder of their lives back in China. But before long, the soldiers are back to work, protecting the citizens sheltering in this UN base. In these calmer moments, the peacekeepers work to build trust with the civilians they protect. This is another task that the female peacekeepers lead.
As peacekeepers, part of that job is maintaining friendly relationships so that they're humble, they're friendly, they're not trying to be arrogant or shouting or anything. They talk to people. If we can do that, then people will accept us as being, here to help.
我看你今天拿了药膏，为什么呀？
带药膏的话，主要是在前一天，我发现的那边有个小孩受伤了，然后刚好今天就是去那边玩，我想就是借此机会。
The children in particular are excited to meet the Chinese soldiers.
乖，真奇怪。我在路上。
谢谢。
谢谢。生活 is good。
我看见你每次跟那小孩交流的时候，都会把眼镜摘下来，这是为什么？
摘下眼镜可以让他们更清楚地看到我整个脸部，然后当我微笑的时候，让他们可以感到我的善意，这样也算是一种互相尊重的体现。
The peacekeepers begin to adapt to life in South Sudan.
Be careful!
Be careful! But they face one problem that never relents. Water. In summer, temperatures here soar over 40 degrees Celsius. But bases like UN House don't have mains plumbing to supply water. So the soldiers need to find another source. The peacekeepers must leave the safe haven of UN House and travel 10 kilometers across Juba to source their water from the Nile. On the banks of the Nile, water is pumped into each truck. At a purifying plant, chlorine is added to kill off pathogens. Then they truck it to UN House for distribution. The base is resupplied. But the peacekeepers can never fully rest. Even when things are calm, they have work to do that pushes them further into this hostile country. The Chinese peacekeepers are beginning to get to grips with life in South Sudan. They've had to learn quickly how to deal with violence and the tough environment. But they've also experienced another side to this country.
这些人对我们还是很友好的，很欢迎我们，见了我们很热情，没事聊聊天，在难民营里边。
The peacekeepers must regularly patrol across the country.
今天咱们巡逻哪几块区域啊？
今天主要巡逻是7、8、9、11。
Their work out in the country is as important as their work in the civilian camps.
Mama, yes. Oh, okay.
We need to be a trusted partner so that local people see us as helping them to get back onto their own feet. And as soon as they can do that, and as soon as we have peace, our job is done and we can move out.
Photographer Yang sees how the relationship between the civilians and Chinese has changed.
迎到一个新人的时候啊，等到我们再去拍的时候，我再去拍他们的时候，他们大老远的看见我们还打招呼，啊，时不时还竖个大拇指，啊 ，China good，China good。我感觉这当时你看到的时候，你心里边非常暖，就是你知道吧？就是说一个人他是这种接纳了你。
Back at base, the pace of work appears slow. But the peacekeepers know from experience that danger could strike them at any moment. When that happens, these soldiers from 10 different countries need to be able to work together.
There are a large number of nationalities working for the UN in South Sudan. You will find Nepalese, Rwandans, people from Burundi, India. It's a really multicultural environment.
Well, this is one of the big challenges of the UN. Everybody comes with their own different ways of doing it. They have their own perceptions, their own culture, their own language, and trying to work together in that way is always going to be difficult.
The peacekeepers know they must build up trust with their international colleagues. To help this, the soldiers have organized a small festival to introduce their cultures to their colleagues. International Mother Language Day allows the peacekeepers to show off the food of their home cultures and give traditional performances. It reveals the diversity of cultures that have come together to work for the United Nations and for peace in South Sudan.
我觉得这种文化的交流是一个很有意义的事情。它给我们的维和的生活，不光这种是一种文化的交流，也给我们的维和的生活让着我们也会更加多姿多彩。
It is the great strength of the UN that basically, by us being here and from all of those different nationalities, we are the world. It brings us together, it gives us strength.
The bonds between the peacekeepers are important because soon they are going to be tested to their limits as their mission heads out into this dangerous country.